Alrighty. Hopefully I'm being picked up well. I think I need to actually move my mic away from me. I think I get good at this streaming stuff eventually. But I have some new software since the last stream. Here we go. Alrighty, welcome everybody. We are streaming Pokeymanz. We're up to the Game Master's Guide section, which is going to be pretty cool. Alright. Is the music being picked up well? It looks like it. So I'm gearing up for my campaign. So usually at the start of these streams, I like to kind of show some of the progress I've made very briefly, maybe 5 minutes or less. We've got the Pokemon Snap drop scenes. So when we go on break and stuff, I'll put them on the screen like this. If you right click the image, you have a library of Pokemon Snap pictures. So every time we take a break, it'll be a different picture. Eventually we'll rotate to the same ones. But it'll be really cool. And they'll have some type of like cosmetic effect or animated effect on top of them. I finally finished my region map, which I made by myself from scratch using Incarnate. And this is the general setup of the adventures so far. We have a tooltip. The tooltip isn't live right now. Let me change it. But pretty much this is the region. They're going to start in Twinger Town. That's going to be our starting town. They'll have their character sheets on the left side, just for as a visual thing, because they'll have their own actual form fillable character sheets in its own kind of folder and section. But this is the Dual Destiny, the campaign I plan on running, or I think they're called journeys in this system. And when we do play this, you see this bar up here? It's going to fluctuate with news and tooltips and stuff like that. It's not live right now. I wonder if I go like this, if it'll refresh it. Sometimes you have to reboot the system itself. But yeah, this is what we've got so far. And anyways, let's get to the book. We're covering the Game Master's Guide section. Oh, I do have an example of these cards filled out. Let me zoom in. So these are how the cards look, and this is an example of it filled out. Which this is an actual player. One of the players is wants to be a gym leader in training, specializing fighter types. And he's planning to start with Chimchar. And all the appropriate sections are filled out. He's from Sinnoh. Okay, but we're here to review the Pokeymanz. Let's check out what we got in store today. So this is the game mastering section. This is important for people like me who has to run the show. Of course, it's like everything else, it's a collaboration, but the bulk of the work has and always will be on the shoulders of the DM, the narrator, the game master, who's going to kind of parse out the tales, the stories, the items they find, the villains, the NPCs, whereas the players mostly focus on their one character and their Pokemon in this system, versus other systems where it's just their one character. So with that said, that's why the game mastering sections are always so important, because it really helps us kind of like zoom in on what we need to be managing, what we need to take a step back from, what we should and shouldn't care about to an extent, because everybody's different. Alright, so let's see what this says. Game mastering. It's a thankless job, but someone's got to do it. GMing is one of those tasks that everyone has opinions on, but practical experience is king. Even so, there are tips and tools of the trade that can help. Happy gaming. Alright, so Riding the Lightning. Really cool title. GMing in Pokeymanz is a lot of work. A GM's job is to set up the situation and the story, present challenges, and then make a lot of calls on what to do and doesn't fly. On what does and doesn't fly. As a very open and narrative system, Pokeymanz asks a lot of a prospective game master. Pulling aside the curtain, the design tools of Pokeymanz has been to make a rule structure where PCs can do something cool and the rules don't hamper that from happening. Alright, and I particularly like going over these bolded sections that are like, this is the whole thing is the meat of everything, right? But this is the important section. This means that the system asks for a GM and players that are willing to improvise, even more so in most other systems, and it asks for a GM to know when to toss whole sections of the rules aside in the name of fun. Let's see. However, GMs are not alone. In this section, the base guidelines and resources for GMs will lay out how to help lift some of that burden, give an idea of what's necessary to get started for a game of Pokeymanz. Mechanical cogs of GMing, techniques to improve, sample episodes, which I'm very interested in seeing the structure that they build out for their day-to-day games. All right, let's see the general advice. Now, this is almost like, doesn't matter what system you play, the general advice is almost always the same, with very few exceptions. So we'll skim over this, mostly reading the titles. Be the PC's biggest fans. Okay, now I'm not gonna read this section, but pretty much what that almost always means is that you shouldn't be antagonistic towards your players. Are you going to sometimes defeat your players? Or in D&D, are you going to sometimes maybe even kill your players? Yes, that doesn't mean you're not their fan. The difference is that you need to make sure that you're giving them the opportunities and the tools to succeed, that you're hoping for them to succeed, and at every step of the way, the first thing in your mind is this fun for your players? Is this appropriate challenge? Among other stuff. So being their biggest fan doesn't mean that you have to hold their hand, pat them on their back, and ask them if they're okay. It's just making sure at the end of the day that you know that your goal is to tell a story with these people, and they're the main characters, and that you should genuinely enjoy them. Present situations, not rails. So pretty much it's like, have a general concept for what you want to go down, but don't put a hard answer out there. Don't be like, this is only solvable by choosing B. No, maybe C can get the job done with enough creativity. Pay attention to your players. So let me see what they want to see. Deploy problems that allow people to indulge in a part of the game they love. Okay. So pay attention to your players. You always want to make sure that you're tailoring the experience to something that they're going to enjoy. Don't promote a Pokemon contest every single session when your players have no interest, or episode rather, in Pokemon contests. You want to do that one time? You go to a town where contests are popular, that's appropriate. But you don't want to make every single episode about contests and your players have zero interest in being a part of that. So you want to deploy stuff that they like to engage and stuff. All right, have fun. If you're running a game and you're miserable doing it, stop. Amen to that. The unwritten authority. As a side note, as a GM, you'll be viewed as an authority figure at the table. Pretty standard stuff. Note, this doesn't mean you need to be the group's therapist, just that you need to hold people accountable and be ready to make a hard call if one needs to be made. Roger, roger. Yes, and. It's funny, because I'm in my D&D games, I'm kind of on the opposite spectrum, which I know it can bear a lot of tension for some folks, but it's whatever. But I'm actually like a no-but person usually, which really does mean the same thing in regards to a lot of situations. Like if you want to do something that's too crazy, I'm not going to say yes and. I'm going to say, no, but here's something that's more appropriate that fulfills a similar thing or the same thing. But they're really the same thing, it's just this is worded nicer. But I'll skip this section. Pretty much it just says, when the players want to do something, usually the answer is yes. And that is true. Safety tools. So I am deploying safety tools. I actually have a document for our game to which safety tools are already using. So safety tools are there to make sure that at the end of the day, everyone feels comfortable. Everyone is okay. Everyone has a voice. So we are deploying open DMs where you can write us if there's any issues. X and an O cards. An X card means this scene has to stop immediately. It's inappropriate. An N card is maybe it's time to stop the scene, fade to black. And an O card is like a check-in if everybody's okay. So we're using those two tools. We also have a break, which isn't really a safety tool, but everyone needs some time to unwind and relax, refill on snacks, take bio breaks. So it's a 10-minute break to kind of reset everything. And then finally, we do stars and wishes. At the end of an episode, which I have to get used to saying instead of session, the players are going to tell us their favorite moment and wishes. So your star is your favorite moment. That was like the highlight of your night. Your wishes is stuff you want to see more of that you enjoyed. Like, last session, that gym encounter was so amazing. I wouldn't mind having more like really unique challenges like that. That's my wish. And ultimately the goal is to keep the experience positive because it's the last thing we do in an episode before we all say goodnight or goodbye. we do stars and wishes. And I've noticed in my D&D games that it just kind of hammers in that final moment of the night is reliving our favorite moments of the session. And as a DM, it really opens up my perspective to what they enjoyed. And sometimes the answers are not what you expect them to be. There's the obvious ones like, man, that was pretty freaking awesome. Everyone's going to say that's their star tonight. But then once in a while, you'll get something you're like, holy crap, maybe I should try to make stuff like that happen more often. And all of that goes into the mental health side of it. I know it's like, how is talking about your favorite moment a safety tool? Well, promoting positive kind of mental states and health is important. And leaving on such a high note, it really does wonders to keep people the rest of the day, anxiety, suspense, all that stuff, wanting to come back to the table because it feels safe, it feels welcoming, and it feels like your voice is being heard since it's your time to vocalize what you like and what you want to see more of. And then it's my job to try to implement that. But yeah, safety tools is very important. I will say to a lesser extent in Pokemon, in some regards. Like in D&D, we really have to like iron out like some more severe topics of like death, how mature things are when it comes to relationships. Like, are we going to be sleeping around with folks and all that stuff? In Pokemon, generally I'd say the game we're going to be aiming for PG-13, but we're adults, so there'll be cursing, there'll be some lewd jokes every now and then. But ultimately, the vibe does shift down to a more kind of relaxed environment when you handle Pokemon. Not that the tools are less effective or less needed. Alrighty. Session 0. So session 0, oh look, it says a short primer on the game setting. That's actually funny. I make a primer for all my games and I haven't read this yet. Let me see if I can find my primer. Because I did make them a primer. Come on, primer. All right, I found the primer, but it didn't open up in the didn't open up on the stream. Let me change. Nice. Okay, so this is my primer for, and I didn't read the Game Master section yet, so it's just a happy coincidence that I mentioned the primer. A short primer on the game setting, so players know what their characters should know about the world. Establish the schedule, which we're going to work out in Discord. Character creation, rough backgrounds, connections, all that stuff. Teach the basics. Deployed with safety tools, which is all in the primer. Collections of wish lists and callings, all in the primer. In fact, I actually have an expanded section of calling examples. Make sure all the players understand and agree on the tone and genre of the game. This is the primary reason games fall apart. The true primary reason games fall apart, the real, undefeated, no contest, is not the tone of the game. It is scheduling. That is first and foremost, not next to. This is by far and large, people just can't keep to a schedule. But obviously this is also important to a lesser extent. Usually nowadays when you put out a listing for a game, at least in the professional space, because I do a lot of D&D games professionally, the tone needs to be delivered in the ad. If someone signs up to the game, there should be no mistake what they're signing up for. But that could just be a difference of like a casual person coming to the game versus me who is used to all this. For example, I made the primer already unprompted, stuff like that. Alrighty. So here's the primer I made. Can I do a 2-page spread? Here we go. All right, so here's our primer for our game. And let's see here. In a world of Pokemon, the bond between trainers and Pokemon shapes destinies. While Pokemon may possess incredible power, it is you, the trainer, who will be the driving force behind every moment that matters. And I won't read it all. But pretty much I outlined here for my players in 2 pages, and really it's 1 page because there's a cover for our campaign, Dual Destiny. What the Gemini region means. It's very simple. Gemini region, which is a play on Gemini, is dualities, opposites, and it talks about how opposites are not meant to be in conflict. Just because two things are different, it's okay for them to be together. It's even encouraged. It represents the belief that I write here that every element, force, or emotion has a counterpart. And true strength lies in understanding, accepting, and sometimes fusing these dualities, which is going to be a big thing in our campaign, especially with the villains of I'm on the fence of team fusion or team merge, but I'm leading fusion. And then it just speaks about how the true reason opposites attracts. So then we have the character creation section. You know, I tell them right off the back because most of them have not read the book. I think only one of them has started digging into it. Don't worry about the mechanics. We'll learn them together. For now, focus on what you hope to achieve and the perfect partner to be your starter Pokemon. So how does trainer creation work for our Pokeymanz, right? And I guess this is all under game mastering, right? This is how I handled, unprompted, to make a short primer on the game setting for session 0, which all my players have already been given this primer for. I have 4 players right now. This is what I told them to choose. Choose a name and pronouns. Create a short first impression description of yourself. And of course, all of this I've kind of parsed and picked out from this amazing resource of Pokeymanz. And if you're new to this stream, I'm telling you right now, go download this. It's free on the site of the same name. In any case, so create a calling or an overarching goal. Assign your trainer attributes, which I plan to do with them because they don't know. Let me zoom in a little more. I'm going to go back down to one page just so you can actually see the page that matters, which is this one. And then I'll move around. All right, so this is the section that we're currently going. So I give examples of callings. It could be a battle frontier trainee, a breeder, a catch-em-all, contest goer, detective, doctor, photographer, professor, gym leader in training. And we have a gym leader in training already as one of the players. Researcher, safari worker, type specialist, or whatever else you come up with, right? I then took what was put in the books in both sections, how to deploy the skills and what the skills stand for. So we've got heart, fitness, research, and tactics for the game, right? And very simple. Sometimes I use my own words. Other times I use exactly what the book said. Language to describe the 4 core skills in the game. Heart, fitness, research, and tactics. Though, since I'm deploying items, and I know there was like a suggestion for 8, because I'm a big fan of making sure things like tactics don't run away with the game, which they may not already. I put that for carrying capacity with the items, it's equal to your max fitness die. So if your fitness die is a D8, then you can carry 8 items. If your fitness die is a D10 or a D12, you can carry 12 items. And if it's a measly D4, then sorry, you're not fit to carry too much stuff. Now, I'm not sure if the book has alternative rules for that being handled that way, but that's how I handled how many items you can have, how many potions, specialty balls you can have based on your fitness. Alrighty. So starter Pokemon. We're only using 4 generations, and that's mostly because I didn't want to have to token out 1,000 tokens. You can see here in my campaign that I actually did make 4 generations worth of tokens. Let's just go to Gen 3 as an example. They're all fully functional, ready, with accommodating character sheets. So I was like, I'm not gonna kill myself and do like 8, 9 generations or whatever it is nowadays. So anyways, choose any base starter Pokemon, optional nickname or gender, any 4 moves they can learn leveling up, record its types and appropriate abilities, start with mastery. We'll cover this, no worries. And then I'm going to do my own fake mons, probably about 80 of them. So if they want a classical start, we'll have one of that character at the Pokemon Professor in the opening episode, picking out between Durage, Q-Brave, and Elefrown. We have optional house rules. I won't get into some signing chance and signing callings, and then again the safety tools we'll be using in our game for the players. All right, back to the book. I know that was a long side quest. Sorry. When I nerd hard. Okay, so anyways, all this is covered in session 0. The players already have the primer to read up on it, but during session 0, I'll help them distribute their attributes. I'll help them work out a calling that's perfect for them, edges, all that stuff. And then obviously we'll talk about the tone and expectations. One of my other players, Liz, she's a super Pokemon lover. So I'm sure that no matter what we kind of throw at her, she's gonna just be probably for it. All right, GM quick tools. So I've actually used some of this stuff before I even touched this book. I was messing around with the site and I saw that they had encounter generators, random Pokemon locations, even trainer generators. So cool. We are using the Roll20 stuff. Here we have Roll20 sheets. This is a player sheet, for example. And then here we have the generations. We have a Pokemon sheet, for example. So very, very cool. It's actually pretty insane. And I guess it speaks to the quality of the community that's been fostered. It's pretty insane how much resources are available for this in its smaller capacity, because obviously it's not mainstream, it's not official, it's its own thing. But this is an absolute example of a great passion project. And I love this. I'll be using this stuff pretty heavily. All right, we all live in a Pokemon world. The Pokemon setting. The Pokemon world is a place where humans and Pokemon live in harmony and make their way together. Pokemon world is divided into regions, and a Pokemon journey will typically take place inside one region. Some general things to keep in mind about the Pokemon world when designing for the setting. A sense of optimism. Pokemon world is generally optimistic, and even the most chemically edgy of material holds out hope for a happy ending. Good example. Very rare you'll have those dark moments, though they're great, like the snowy mountains of Ash, Ash turning to stone with Mewtwo. Most scenes with Giratina get a little dark, but yeah. Other than that, generally it's a the glass half full kind of world, which I'm excited about. Focus on harmony with nature in the Pokemon world. The natural balance and coexistence between humans and Pokemon is considered of sacred importance. If things are out of balance, it's a sign that something is very wrong. All right. Amazing technology. Tying in with the above, the Pokemon world is slightly further ahead than our own in regards to technology. They have teleportation, can hold physical matter in a digital space, and can generate power in ways that doesn't damage the environment. All right, the Pokemon League. While not all regions have a league proper, most areas have strong trainers that act as community leaders. In most media, this is the furthest into the political structure of the setting that the official material is willing to delve. While there may be other factions at play, whatever structure equates to the Pokemon League is a region in a region is bound to have involvement in important events. Nice. Yeah, Coliseum is a great example, and I'm happy that one of my players has a dark ball on their necklace, and it's really cool because he also has the bad reputation because of that, because he used to have a shadow Pokemon, but it's too powerful to start with a shadow Pokemon, so he's just a regular Mon now. But it speaks to the life he used to live, and now he's trying to like start fresh and redeem himself and become a gym leader against all odds. He's a gym leader in training. So that's going to be really cool. And he's starting with Chimchar. All right, scenario design, running the game. So this is really cool. I definitely want to, this section is really important to me, but a sip of my coffee. And I'm wearing my glasses today just for you, Pika, because my eyesight is so garbage that when I look at my second monitor, I can't see chat because it's like a small little thing on the second monitor to chat. But I can see it perfectly fine because I got my glasses on today. All right, running the game and scenario design. Okay, that's all a good start. But what about the actual game? You know, the one I'm reading this section to learn how to run. The game specifically made for Cusco's game. That game. Yeah, exactly. That's a great reference. There's a structure to running a game. In many ways, GMing is an exercise in game design itself, where the GM makes calls on what challenges to throw at the PCs and how, based on what they think will be fun and engaging. The following section is written with mechanical structure and guidance for challenges the PCs might face, a primer on storytelling structure and how it pertains to campaign planning, some helpful tips on how GMs can write notes to keep track of NPCs, and lastly, some tips on how to tweak the levels of challenge in their games. It's highly recommended to read this section before running a game. Well, shit, I'm doing the right thing then. And the encounter section is the most important read of all. Now go forth and make your players scream, laugh, cry within established boundaries, of course. Making a big bad guy for your game that everyone unanimously hates isn't a necessary step, but it's definitely a fun one. Yeah, they're gonna hate the crap out of the leader of Team Fusion on the Full Metal Alchemist Pokemon and people, but we're not gonna get into that right here on the chat. We're not talking about that right now. But they're gonna hate him. I just have to make sure they find a PC they love first, and then Full Metal Alchemist them. All right, each step you climb is one more step up the ladder. The ladder is a session. The session is what we call an episode. And an episode is what we call a journey. All right, in the structures of a campaign. That's not actually written here. I just sometimes I just add that make stuff up because I like making stuff up. All right. Encounters are the basic building blocks of player engagement in Pokemon. There are challenges that trainers have to get their way out of or resolve one way or another. Episodes will generally have several encounters, one after the other, broken up by role-playing and other scenes. GMs are encouraged to give the players a variety of kinds of challenge, even within combat. A lot of things can happen to trainers and Pokemon on their journeys, including getting lost in the forest, getting trapped in caves, being overrun by stampedes. Sorry, Simba. Rampaging Pokemon, falling into pit traps at inconvenient times, finding other trainers who have lost their mojo in need of encouragement. Those are just the kind of things that happen to Ash Ketchum. So treat encounters as a chance to get creative and give players interesting problems to solve. I'm already going to test the players to see if we get a Pidgeot moment, or even an Arbok moment and Weezing. Like, hey man, this place, you solved the problem today, but this is going to keep happening. Are you willing to leave your Pokemon behind to keep this place safe? And if they say no, okay. But I want to put my players in a position where they could potentially relive those dramatic questions, those traumatic moments, and tackle it for themselves. And unlike the show, maybe we actually rekindle with those Pokemon, because half of those Pokemon we never see again, which sucks. Or a trainer like AJ with the Sandshrew. I always thought it was cool because my name, some people call me AJ, just my name shortened. And I really like that trainer with the Sandshrew, and we never see him again. It was one of the many people he promised to come back and fight again and never did. All right, so general tips. There are a lot of different kinds of encounters, but keep things in mind for all of them. Try to design your encounter so that each trainer will get to contribute at least once to solve it. Try not to make most encounters overly complicated or intricate. Focus on giving the players one problem to crack at a time, or a few problems if it's an executor, then you got to crack all of them. The exception to the above is if the point of the episode is a larger challenge, such as a global countdown to disaster, a session-long gym challenge, or if the climax of the episode has many factors at play. You know, we gotta end game it sometimes, right? You gotta have the one of the players get taken out of the main fight because a waterfall is about to collapse on the village, so they have to stop that. The other person has to stop the Team Fusion leader. The other one has to handle all the admirals and grunts and conflicts and getting people to safety. There's certainly moments for dynamic craziness, but the day-by-day session can be simple, right? There's a Bidoof dispute. Whose dam is damn good. And the players have to solve it as there's just a heated turmoil between the two groups on who has the best dam. Let's see here. Remember, the party doesn't have to be successful at navigating an encounter to get Pokemon XP from it. Remember that any kind of encounter can be complicated by hindrances and other factors. And that as a general rule, one twist per encounter is often enough. Make exceptions to the one twist per encounter where it is funny, drives the episode's plot, adds tension. The countdown. A great tool to make players sweat is the countdown. While it's recommended not to use an actual timer, as player response to being put under that much pressure can differ a lot, the character's supposed ability to respond to a crisis, there's a way to give the sense of impending doom. Alright, so let's see. Let's just dig into this real quick. I read faster in my mind, so sometimes I can break things down quicker. Is that normal? Is that just an everybody thing that you mind read faster? Speaking clock, okay. All right. So to talk about the countdown, which time is abstract version of time. There are systems. Fabula Ultima is an example of that. Blades in the Darks, clocks, right? So for me, if I'm going to have a serious situation happen, I'm going to just throw a clock up. A clock is an abstraction of time where you can advance or uh, stop its progression or even make it retract uh, based on your action. So let's say that there is a legendary Pokemon ransacking a town. You could put a clock up with eight notches in it, right? And every time the Pokemon does something dramatic, if it fills this clock up, the town is destroyed. It's everything is kind of messed up. And it's a little different for Pokemon, but we've seen it where towns can get like ruined and wrecked and stuff. But the point is, the players can do stuff, complete objectives to reduce the clock, or if it's favorable, increase the clock to end an encounter. So those countdowns, they bring tension. So I could easily see me slapping a clock in the game, like that has like 4 nodes, and like, oh, this thing fills up, it's over. You've lost this, or 8 or 12, etc. And it puts that pressure without it being like, hey guys, we got 10 minutes in real world to get this done. Because there's rules, there's clarifying things, there's casual conversations. So real timers don't usually translate well to TTRPGs. But the clock systems from those other games work really well. All right, let's see here. Starting encounters. So you've got structure for your encounters, but how will they work mechanically? Note, it is recommended that if you do not already have a document where you keep your notes, create one at this step. Try to keep things centralized to 1 or 2 documents or tabs as much as possible. All right. First, create the idea for the encounter. How do I stat encounters? What type of challenges? How do I represent my idea for fun challenge and numbers? Get the idea down, know what you're going for before putting a mechanical framework around it. After that, noise. So this is kind of the building blocks to like how encounters work in any system. You always want to know what the go is, what the conflict is, and also like what's the fallout or the reward, stuff like that. All right, encounter types. Battles are far from the only obstacle trainers can face in Pokeymanz. I don't know why I like reading Pokeymanz so much, but I like reading Pokeymanz. An encounter is defined as an obstacle that faces the players that must be overcome before continuing towards a goal. And that could include things like getting out of a pitfall trap, convincing someone to do something, chasing down a thieving Mankey that stole your hat. All of these are encounters. Maybe you wake up and an Ariados has wrapped you and your entire party in cocoons. Is it grim to say that they're probably going to eat you? I guess this is not D&D, they're not going to eat you, but why'd they wrap you up in their cocoons? Maybe they are going to eat you, I don't know. They've alluded to dark things all the time, like Beedrill's hunting down 10-year-old kid to sting him to death. So anyways, that could be a real fun encounter. Like, you guys rest in this forest, and when you wake up, you're all wrapped in freaking webbed cocoons and stuff. I'm probably going to have to make that an episode. Alright, so let's see what else we got here. Battles are already well explained in the trainer's manual, and for good reason. The climax of many games is likely to be a battle of some kind. And while the following section will include some pointers on battles from the GM's perspective, we'll be taking a look at how the mechanics work for other types of non-battle encounters. Alright, it's good to give the players a heads up on what kind of encounter they're in, if only so they know what they're getting into for and if certain edges and hindrances apply. Okay, a player's approach to the situation will affect what kind of encounter they end up in. If a party of trainers tries to talk down to the grunt of a villainous team where the GM anticipated a battle, it's a wise decision as a GM to shift the intended battle to a social encounter at least some of the time. Players should have agency, and this is where prepping situations and not plots can help a lot. So this is just standard kind of... So I'm not sure if we get into the meat and breakdown of how it works in Pokeymanz, but all of this is very, very standard stuff. Like, if you have a battle encounter in D&D, and your players maybe have a bard or someone else that's sociable, or even a player that's not skilled but has a great argument, you should always leave room. Of course, this is needed for, especially if you're new to TTRPGs or don't understand how the structure is innately. But pretty much what it's saying is, you know, there's always multiple solutions to an encounter. Encounters should never always be the exact same thing. Like when you run through the tall grass, oh look, another rat attack. You gotta fight it or run. Maybe you run into the tall grass and there's an injured rat-a-tat. Now you've got to help it, nurse it to health, get it to a Pokemon center. What injured it? Why is it injured? Is it sick? Is it diseased? I don't know if Pokemon disease, besides Pokérus, is a thing in the Pokemon world. So that's pretty cool. Encounter types is just telling you, like, make sure it's not always the same thing. Generally, if like 6 out of 10 encounters are a fight, the players will probably still like it because it's just how the math works out, and people expect Pokemon battles or D&D battles, stuff like that. But you do want to make sure that you're providing opportunities for other stuff. Pokemon battle mechanics are covered extensively in their own chapter. So here we'll just cover how to run them from the GM side. First, decide how many Pokemon you think will be a challenge for your players. A good rule is to remember that each additional Pokemon adds a minute or two to the turn order. So keep in mind the balance between having lots of Pokemon to fight and making combat drag. A good option if you feel combat is typically too slow is to have fewer, stronger Pokemon and giving them more actions out of the boss Pokemon mechanic. A good rule of thumb is 1 action per player action. Don't bother with XP calculations for enemy Pokemon. Just throw in the numbers that feel right. If a Pokemon should be consistently good at a move, give them D8. If you need to come up with an encounter on the fly, open up a few related Pokemon wikis and pick just moves off of their move list. For wild Pokemon battles, try and create a group of Pokemon for a variety of moves. For trainer battles, think about the theme of the trainer and what their strategy might be in battle. Have fun giving the move combinations that sound interesting. If they've had time to prepare for the PCs, they might even have a strategy to counter one of the PC's common tricks. Put your stats in the appropriate place in your notes so you can easily access them as you run. There's always that one person who was fooling around on their phone and didn't think of what to do before their turn came up. Without failure. That is absolutely accurate. Okay. So one of the things how I would handle large sums of Pokemon, which perhaps is how they handle it with the boss Pokemon, is in D&D. Unfortunately, sometimes D&D rules fail us. They don't have everything we need to succeed. But they have something in D&D called swarms. And they have swarms of insects, swarms of bugs, swarms of bats. But you don't have swarms of people. And that's what I've corrected in my D&D tables. So now when my players are sieging a city or something like that, there might only be 6 enemies. But there is a token that just says army. There's a token that just says militia, even support or cavalry. And what I'll do is I could literally just make one token and put a bunch of Rat-a-tat arts in it, right? Like, holy crap, 30 Rat-a-tats just rolled up on you. It's going to probably have a crazy stat block. But the fun part is I'm going to allow the players, every single time they do any type of damage to that swarm, like, hey, describe knocking out 2 or 3 of them. Because this is not, even though it's one token, this is a whole SWAT of enemies. So when you do your flamethrower, why don't you have some fun describing how you're taking people out? If you're a fighting Pokemon, you know, you're chopping them down, you're kicking them, you're tossing them. Every single successful description is a Pokemon defeated, which is really fun. So I'm going to definitely throw swarm tokens in there. That's just something I picked up running so many games over the years, and as well as so many systems, because you have Fabula, Dragon's Bane, Shadow Dark, Cyberpunk Red, D&D 5th Edition, Fate series, Dungeon Worlds, all systems that I can run to some extent or level. And soon, Pokeymanz. Alright, put your stats in the appropriate place in your notes so you can easily access them. Cool, we covered this. And I love all this artwork as usual. Alright, competition encounters. Trainers and their Pokemon are likely to get into many different types of contests and competitions outside of the battlefield. Competition encounters cover this ground between these more defined systems and a simple contested role. In fact, in essence, a competition encounter is just an extended version of a contested role. Competition encounters happen anytime 2 or more groups enter a non-battle competition. Tug of war, chase scenes, scavenger hunts, all count as competition encounters. And for some groups less invested in the nitty-gritty of Pokemon contests, they get slot contests into the category as well. Which I'm interested to see if we have any contest goers. But right now we just have our Pokemon guy. Which I'll pop that back on stream again real quick. Where is it? Oh, it's not. It's in our DMs. Where's my DM with this guy? Here we go. All right. So my first trainer, so I have 4 people playing, but this person has already made their character. I asked everybody you can see in the primer to be 18 or older because I don't want to have to simulate things like dating and stuff with minors. And because we're all adults, maybe there's that one character I introduced and he's just like, oh man, he's hot or she's hot, or I just like who they are. I like their personalities. And sometimes adults they'll move into that area where they want to like, we're not gonna do like fade to black romance in a Pokemon game, but maybe they want to get a boyfriend or girlfriend. I don't want to have to handle that with minors, so I said, hey guys, the Pokemon journey in our world starts at 18. So if you want to do a Pokemon character, be 18, don't be 10. So anyway, so you're gonna see the ages are going to be at minimum 18 on these sheets. But this is Ajax, 23, he, him. His calling is he's a gym leader in training. He's from the Sinnoh region and he has a Chimchar. And that's his artwork and stuff. And you can see the dark ball because he used to have a shadow Pokemon on his neck. All right, cool. So anyways, back to this. I was just thinking about the players and I was thinking about how like the competitions and if I'm going to have a contest goer, it reminded me that I have a gym leader in training, which is cool. All right, so competition encounters. So I'm going to go mostly over the bold sections. Then if I feel like I need more understanding, I'll run into the which looks alongside it. All right. Rolling in turn to accrue hits, the GM decides ahead of time how many hits must be accumulated for a success. So it's like a skill challenge. Like maybe you need to succeed 3 out of 5 times. You just have to accrue a certain number of hits, or maybe trainer rolls, research rolls, fitness rolls, etc. Like the snowy mountain collapses, you have a board on your back. Maybe you try surfing it with some fitness test. 3 out of 5 chances you make it to the bottom. Anything less, you get swallowed by the snow and the story continues in a different direction. All right, let's see here. And I also love the idea of having like tug of war and other things. I definitely want them to go to a town that's like really huge on Pokemon like competitions that aren't battles and aren't contests. All right, let's see here. Continued encounters. If the gap between 2 parties gets too big one way or the other, deploy rubber banding. A team wave behind can suddenly catch up in the final round at the cost of some important resource item or other narrative consequence. Listen, we're trying to escape this dungeon to see who can get to the other side first, or cave rather. You're really far behind. Give me your escape rope. Give me your escape rope, and we can try to get you caught back up. As long as you're burning some type of resource to balance it, so it doesn't always feel like, hey, I did a really great job. Oh, but you're just gonna give them like a free handout to catch up to me, especially if it's like a player thing, a friendly competition. Sometimes the people winning, it's fun to be the winner, but other people start to not have as much a good time. But if you're going to give them the chance to always compete with someone who's doing well, there needs to be a consequence or a resource burnt, because then all of a sudden that person in the lead's like, oh man, I had to use their escape rope. And it feels epic, it feels tension, and he still feels rewarded for doing great, and that person feels rewarded that they could continue to participate in a meaningful way. Sometimes the GM might want to have a competition be the point of a session, such as a bug catching competition. How did I forget about those? I used to love those. In that case, instead of a contested series of rows, devise a scoring system for the rest of the encounters in the session and count those as hits. As an individual encounter, try to aim for 2 total rolls per player. Some example competitions include participating in Pokeathons, a chase scene, Pokemon contest, a canoe carving contest, especially for Charizard, the bug catching contest, a tug of war. Was it the ice canoe with the Charizard Fire Breath? I might be misremembering. All right, I won't go over these in detail, but we'll look at some examples of the encounters, the types, opponents, and rewards. So we have 3D12 charts here. So let's go to our game and roll 3D12, and then we'll check those out. All right, 6, 1, and 9. All right, so tables with example types of competition, possible opponents for the party, and rewards. So 6. It's a dance off or a rap off. So right at the back, you know, you got Pokemon, maybe trainers dancing together to see who's the best. Maybe they're rapping and stuff like that. It could be really fun. The Pokemon rap. Um, that seems like a great time. So then we have, what do we get? 1 and 9? Unusually organized wild Pokemon. So right in the middle of your competition, right? A whole storm of wild Pokemon come in. But the person who's holding is like, don't y'all stop. Keep it moving. Keep them busting. And everyone keeps dancing, but they have all of these wild Pokemon just kind of stumbling into the middle of the competition. And now it's like people are dancing on top of the Pokemon if they're large, under the Pokemon, avoiding stepping on them. And the competition continues. And then the reward for that, which is what, 9, I think? Oh, wait, the final one is not a D12 chart. Damn it. And of course, it rolled a number that's not feasible. Let's do a D8. All right, we got 4. I just saw the first 2 at 12, and I didn't even look at the next one. All right, so we got useful information or a clue. So maybe they were in a grander competition or a gym challenge that involved the Pokemon, wild Pokemon running around and dancing, and then your clue to advance is given to you, or a useful piece of information. Disaster encounters generally happen when something about the environment or situation prevents progress towards a goal. When the threat is not able to be managed simply by defeating an opponent. So that's what a disaster encounter is. Choose your stakes and make sure to communicate it clearly to the players. They need to know exactly what's going to cause them to lose, right? Exactly what's going to cause them to succeed. There should be no guessing or anything like that. All right, similar to a battle, disaster encounters make use of features and hazards. Choose a main feature or hazard. This is the cause of the disaster. Supporting features as well. Disasters frequently, but not exclusively, use the countdown mechanic, which I already talked about earlier, how I can use clocks for to add tension. Disaster encounters can be mitigated, stopped, escaped, or navigated by any number of approaches, so long as it would logically prevent the stakes from happening. You know, if the dam is breaking or they start using like ice beam to cover up the cracks. Rock Pokemon are holding it up. It may not be a long-term solution, but something that can prevent an immediate disaster, so they can evacuate a town, for example, get proper people out to repair the walls. That could be a pretty big disaster. Unrelated, but it makes me think of Avatar when they were trying to do the explosions to flood that village of people for being Fire Nation supporters, apparently. Stuff like that you can translate to Pokemon pretty easily, especially with your villain team, right? All right, so disaster encounters continued, an obstacle and consequences. So that's a D12, that's a D20. No mistaking that, all right? Let's go. 7 and 8. All right, so the obstacle, haunting or supernatural event. And then the consequence, crucial clue lost to players, telegraph this. All right, well, what's better for that kind of situation? You get a haunting or supernatural event, and a clue is lost, right? Maybe they're doing like Super Mario style, if you've ever played the Mario games. Getting to the end of the level is such a pain in the ass because the doors you traditionally take are not the correct doors. This is the final stepping stone for the players. So if they don't succeed, maybe they come out and their journey continues, but they came out from the wrong path. So now everything is kind of different or lost, or they don't make it somewhere in time. And there should be hints for that, it's saying. Like telegraph, like, hey, if you do this, there's no going back. It could be the right door, but maybe it's not. All right, puzzle encounters. A puzzle encounter is an encounter where the object is to figure out or find out a specific piece or piece of information. Classic examples of puzzle encounters will be engaging with smaller chunks of overall mysteries, like Phoenix Wright style detective work. Puzzle encounters are unique to the fact that they have a very strong amount to bleed over into what we'll call player ability. Very true. It takes away from what the character can do, which is the great equalizer, to now putting the onus on kind of the player's mental state if you're having like, if it's more reliant on how you can figure it out yourself versus the mechanics of the game. It's not entirely possible to separate out metagaming. Lean into this fact. Just lay out an actual puzzle. Puzzle encounters are incredibly freeform and should be tailored to the group. Don't give your liberal arts major a sliding Sudoku. If you think the puzzle is easy, make it easier. That's true. Remember, if you're dealing with adults, you can't go above 3rd or 4th grade material. It's always easy to be the puzzle master. Puzzle encounters. So D&D style room puzzle, a tricky riddle, Pokemon or other trivia questions, etc., etc. All right, social encounters happen when the meat of the encounter is persuading, communicating, bolstering. All right, so this is pretty easy. We'll look at the bolds briefly. Heart is the go-to trainer attribute for social encounters. Each NPC involved should have a personality trait and a hesitation motive that clashes with the PCs. A trait is a simple descriptor that gives them a little character. Quirks and sadness. The NPC's hesitation, even their traits, are not always explicitly stated to the players, and they shouldn't be. They should be kind of seen, gleamed, presented, but not always outspoken. Sometimes you can say you immediately kind of get the idea that this person is maybe very like afraid and fearful and stuff like that. I don't like to use the word cowardly, but stuff like that. Every social encounter should be a different dynamic and how you socialize with people, because everyone's different. Roles or moves that target the hesitation and traits should be treated like type effectiveness in battles. Accurately identifying a way to mitigate a concern that the NPC has could cause a move to be super effective. Like, this guy is kind of afraid to walk through the forest. Maybe you pull out your Charizard and Charizard walks alongside him. And now he's like, wow, I have this really badass dragon. This absolutely dragon type Pokemon, right? Because Charizard's dragon type, right? Walking next to me. I don't have to be afraid of the Beedrills anymore, because my dragon type is here. Charizard. Alright, for instance, accurately identifying a way to mitigate a concern that the PC should cause a move to be super effective. Noise law. Alright, I got a good handle on social encounters. Hopefully you any viewers can look over, read the section, grab the book. But I have a good idea of how social encounters go and how they're handled, because so much of D&D is a social encounter. So much of it. Especially at my tables where RP takes precedence, and I'm not a huge fan of power gaming, but I won't stop you from power gaming. But I'm always here to tell a great story, to dig into your backstory and plug in people that you care about, people that you love, your goals throughout the entire campaign, right? And of course, we'll have our epic fights. We'll slay the dragon. We'll climb the mountains. But we also need to have tea parties and pretend like we're nobility and all this other stuff that's fun. All right, social encounters continued. Here are some tables. I just want to read out what it is. So we have 2 D20s coming out. 15 and 19. 15, 19. Why should I care? It's not my problem. The hesitation. 19. Naive, optimistic, and foolish. Well, definitely could see that being a really good combination. He's definitely foolish. Maybe naive. Doubtful to be optimistic. In a survival encounter, you can't get rid of the hazard causing the encounter. Only work to mitigate it and escape. Like the building's collapsing. You're not going to be able to prevent it from collapsing. But now you have to mitigate the fallout. And let's see what kind of examples they have here. Inclement weather, extreme temperatures. Do they have the building example? That'd be crazy. They don't have the building example. But they have a lot of really great stuff. They also have the translation for damage and the resolution, which is cool. A lot of them being outlast, escape, etc., etc., etc. Or you can even easily toss in rescue right in there as an additional resolution, like you've rescued somebody. All right, hybrid encounters, like a combination of the two. Making shit up, well, that's what we do. Adding twist. All right, establish a problem. Put something obvious in the way of solving that problem. Complicate the situation or establish a twist. Like, I don't know, like a Team Fusion member saying, my Pokemon was stolen. That person has it. And maybe that person generally is kind of like a douchebag. But what if the twist is that they didn't steal the Pokemon, right? And now you get the Pokemon back for this grunt, and they take out of town, they take off. And then you're like, holy crap, the person we were helping, we were nice to, was the villain all along. And we stole this poor bastard's Pokemon. So it could be good, especially since if you've ever played a game, players will, on occasion, probably more often than they should, jump to conclusions or immediately trust whoever's perceived as the good guy in the situation, especially if there's no reason to believe otherwise. They don't see him that he's grinning and that his hat is tilted and his upper half of his face is kind of blacked out right after the players say they're going to help. But it's there. And if you describe that, then it's too strong a giveaway. So you just kind of let it naturally happen. You want the players to ask questions. And then, of course, the encounter is that the other players can be like, no, I didn't. This is my Pokemon. So that moves us into the opportunity to discover the truth. Or maybe the players instantly just roll up on him, demolish him, take the Pokemon, right? So there's opportunities for that to be a really cool scene. How's my nostalgic Pokemon music doing? I don't even know if you guys can hear the music good or not. But yeah, twists are always, everyone loves a good twist. I've seen some twists I wish I could forget. I won't spoil them because they're just too good. They're too good to reveal because the shows or the movies relied on them. Tension. A final somewhat advanced note. Keep an eye on the tension of the game. So this is twofold, right? Make sure the players aren't getting too stressed. Make sure the tension is relevant to the situation. Stuff like that. I don't know if it's going to allude to that, but got a good grasp on how to build tension, how to break it down, and how to make sure that everyone's okay. The game structure. I don't know if you guys can hear Lord of the Rings in the background, but my wife is in the room using our brand new surround sound, watching Lord of the Rings. And the musical notes they're pleasant to hear. Alright, lay the foundation of the game structure. They're hard. They can take many forms, and the question for every GM is how to present players with a good narrative, or at least how to give stakes to a cool battle, or at least how to make an excuse to tape cool battles together in a mildly cohesive format like in the games. The crux of any story is the conflict. There is a problem to solve. Set up the conflict. Give the PCs a reason to care about it. Dealing with the conflict. Solving the conflict. Wrapping up the effects of the conflict. Etc. 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 One-shots and episodes. When I first started becoming a pro GM, I started with one-shots largely. I made a world called the Obsidian Guard, and it was kind of like a guild, like Fairy Tale of the anime, where you could bring any character you wanted at level 5. You'd have a certain amount of starting gold and a book to choose magical items from, and you'd go on adventures. And the adventure would have an introduction. It would have a midway section with the crisis, and then you would resolve it all in one night. So the difference between a one-shot and a continuance of a campaign is that every one-shot is designed to be in a complete story in one sitting. Alright, so one-shots are named because they usually last 1 or 2 sessions, right? Which is true. Pokeymanz calls one-shots episodes. A good episode would be a group of trainers that live in Cerulean City have to deal with an infestation of Clefairies from the nearby Mount Moon. They need to go to Mount Moon and deal with Team Rocket's Pokemon repelling device intended to drive the rare Pokemon out so they can be easily captured. Trouble on Mount Moon. Oh God, the throwbacks. I know what you're thinking, and the font is called Bolt. Gold Nuts making title cards. Thank you. I actually wasn't thinking that, but I would more than love to have Trouble on Mount Moon. I was actually having trouble finding a font for my Pokemon Snap page, which is my break page for the Pokemon Snap words. I wanted to be big and bulky like a lot of Pokemon titles are, but I wasn't sure like what font to use. But it's really nice to see that we have even stuff like that detailed in here. Stuff that you wouldn't expect to see. Trouble on Mount Moon. At the beginning of the episode, you would generally have all the PC trainers describe where they are, what they're doing, when the Clefairies start swarming the city, give them a fast reason to be together, such as already knowing each other or being in the same place at the same time, and make the problem affect each of them personally. Of course, if you're a one-shot, you want to lay the foundation for why do we help each other. And a common one for this is it's your hometown and no one else is stepping up. That'd be the easiest and fastest way. You guys all step up at the same time, and boom. We're on a cruise and Team Rocket starts sucking people Pokemon up, right? Now we're the only ones that can step up. That's the easiest thing for one shots is you're just the only people willing to make the difference. Or, which is equally important, maybe more important, you're the only ones capable, skilled enough to turn the tides and to make a difference. That's why you're the main characters. Anyone can lift a sword, but when you lift it, it's going to change the world. All right, note that part of the job of a player is to bring a character who will be motivated to participate. That's a super big pet peeve of mine. Luckily, we don't see it often. But what happens is once in a while you have someone that makes a character like you're playing Curse of Strahd, which is like a grim, dark vampire thing, and then they're playing a Powerpuff Girl. There are games where that's appropriate. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it doesn't fit the tone of what you're doing, if it doesn't fit the world, it can really conflict and really change the overall experience of the people who signed up for that dark thing, which they alluded to earlier in this document, how if you're going to play a serious game and then half the party rolls up in a clown car, it could break the immersion and the tension. Same thing for one-shots. You need to make sure you're making someone properly motivated to be prepared to repel what's going on with the Clefairies, to stop the people stealing the Pokemon. Note that it is only one of many ways players can be pointed towards Mount Moon. This is where the situation preparation as opposed to planning specific steps comes in handy. Alright, so let's see what they say here. There are 1 or 2 battles with disturbed local Pokemon on the way to the top of the mountain. The cave-in nearly traps the group in the cave before they make it to the summit. Hell, maybe I wrapped them into Kabutops and all that stuff in the same episode. Or at least that's where they get their fossil from, right? This is where the bulk of the GM's preparation and most of the section will probably be focused on, with stated encounters. Be creative and give players a variety of challenges. Even the most combat-loving player will appreciate the opportunity to hunt down their query every once in a while. At the summit, they find a former admin of Team Rocket. A tough battle ensues with her and her grunts. To make things worse, the emitter they're using to drive out the Pokemon has been turned up, and the group's Pokemon are at a disadvantage until the machine is taken care of. Okay, that's awesome. Simple and effective. A tough capstone encounter is a good way to give a session a climax. For extra spiciness, give it a foreshadowed twist, like maybe after the fight with Team Rocket, a gym trainer comes onto the scene and reveals that he had defected to Team Rocket, Le Gasp in Spanish, and would have given away with Distracting Misty. Or would have gotten away with Distracting Misty too. If it weren't for you meddling kids and your stupid, what's that one pink dog Pokemon? Grumble? Your stupid Grumble. Snubble, and then I forget the name of the evolution form. Gramble, I think, or some shit like that. We got away for 2. Luckily, they pull through and go home to be lauded as the heroes of the day. After this point, it's wise to put in a period where the trainers can wrap up their conflicts, such as Mary getting her date after all, get a little role-playing out of the way, and generally wind down. Episodes have a few strengths as a format. Smaller time investment, more focus on the story except than concepts on the characters. To try out gimmicks, easy for a GM to put together, building blocks of larger journeys. Ramble, there we go. Jesus. Thank you. There's so many Pokeymanz. I think they're fairy types nowadays too. I wonder if it's just because they're pink dogs. If they would have been a different color dog, I wonder the Pokemon bias on decided to make Snubble and Gramble fairies. Maybe it was in the description. Are they fairy types, or am I just another thing I'm misremembering? But I always like to kind of get into like Game Freaks, Nintendo's, and the Pokemon community's mindsets when they give a Pokemon something. And it could literally be that simple. Which, by the way, real men wear pink. Just throwing it out there. Alright, encounters are building blocks. Use them as notes to structure a larger story. To give a better idea of scale, an episode would be the party gets lost in a cave, whereas an encounter might be the group has to deal with a cave-in. Or to give an example how an episode might look in a rough outline form. Okay, so this is cool. I like this video. Let's see. My super cool session now. Make people like me. By me. All right, open up on them leaving town from last episode. That people banter a bit, right? They're walking on the road. The little light, faintly the song is playing in the background. They're in perfect stride and they're smiling all the time, right? The party gets lost in a misty forest. Oh noes! Disaster encounter. The trainers have to figure out what direction they're going in the mist. Maybe one of them uses their Pidgeotto and they just use Gust to try to blow the mist away, but there's just too much mist, right? It's not going to get solved with that. You got to figure it out a different way. Battle encounter. They're ambushed by a colony of Noctowls and other and nocturnal Pokemon. Puzzle encounter. They meet a set of weird twins who play the one tells the truth and the other lies game. After that, it turns out it's a ghost Pokemon problem creating the mist. Someone rang my doorbell. Who could that be? One moment, please. I'm back. Alrighty, let's see here. I got rubber bands for my garbage can delivered to me. Oh man, the things we buy nowadays. Alright, anyways. Oh, the my super cool session that people are gonna love me for. That I made. So this is cool. After all, it turns out to be a ghost Pokemon creating mist. Battle encounter. Face off with the Miss Magius that keeps them in the forest to play. Or it might have been a Miss Magius or a different Pokemon that takes over like a legendary Pokemon or something. But there's a lot of fun ways. It's crazy, like in this show, I know it can't be replicated in the game mechanics, especially since it'd be too OP. But ghost Pokemon were the ultimate, like, do whatever the hell they want Pokemon. Like Haunter pulling out a freaking bomb from his mouth. Luckily, it wasn't something that could kill people, but they certainly were concerned at the time that it was a legit bomb. Oh, man. Where's that move on the sheet? Is that self-destruct? I never seen Throat Bomb as a Pokemon move. Reminder, a general rule, most encounters shouldn't be a slog and should be able to be cleared by 1 or 2 Pokemon from each trainer. So maybe the Gust does work, but it takes 2 or 3 trainers like working together to blow it all away. Or it could be a pseudo version of like Flash in a dark cave. Like they're not able to blow the mist away, but they're able to see a lot more of the area to traverse it better, right? To keep the encounter interesting and an environmental hazard. More dire or important encounters like gym battles, big contests, or crossing dangerous terrain might be more complicated and fraught. These should be saved for episode capstones, or in some rare case, maybe the entirety of the encounter in a short episode, such as gym challenges. Okay. Campaigns and journeys, which is, I think that's the same. The term is just journeys, right? Yeah, okay. A few ways to run a campaign, owning Pokeymanz as a journey, but in the spirit of the Pokemon series and its trappings. The ideal way to run Pokeymanz is episodically, right? You want to it's kind of like a bunch of one-shots tied together, but the overall cohesive story is being told, like the TV show. What this means is that there will be a steady roster of characters who, on their journey, encounter smaller stories, much like episodes that may or may not be connected to an overarching narrative. Maybe I should read instead of just explain exactly what that means, because the author knows how to explain exactly what that means. This is the format for which the character creation rules are designed, with the idea that over the course of events, trainers and Pokemon will get stronger together. Nakama. An episodic journey should have the larger pieces in mind. For instance, the machinations of a nefarious team, or the effects of the awakening of a legendary Pokemon. There may even be a few different things going on underneath that, which are less important but still personally affect the players that stretch over the journey. The idea is to take the same steps as the one-shot, namely setting up the conflict, giving the PCs a reason to care, dealing with the conflict, resolving, and wrapping up. Or stretch it out over a number of episodes, i.e. your journey. Alright, let's see here. Handled and resolved one time. No. I'm really excited for the regional legendaries. I'm gonna find a meaningful way to introduce most of the legendaries from gens 1 through 4, maybe all of them in some capacity, but not to the extent where it's going to bog things down. Maybe, for example, you get the Ash Ketchum Ho-Oh experience, right? Like you'll get a cameo from a legendary. That's what I mean by try to include them all, because even though journeys are really long, in order to have meaningful stories between 4 generations plus the 5th one, a custom 5th one, you're gonna have to either water it down a lot or really not live up to what it means to be that legendary Pokemon. That's why we have seasons of shows that are in one region, because there's so much stories per region, right? But we're doing 4 generations in the fake mons. So I will lean on cameos and other stuff. Even a dream sequence, maybe when you close your eyes under a waterfall, you can see Suqueen. How do you say his name? Suqueen. That I hear people pronounce it like 3 different ways. See, now you got PK, you're gonna have to like spell it out in chat slowly for me how it would be said naturally, not how it's spelled. Anyways, yeah, there'll be interesting ways to include legendary Pokemon in the story. And maybe that'd be a downtime episode as well. Sometimes players need a break from non-stop action. You know, they need that D&D beach episode, right? They need that unwind and relax episode. I'm not talking about like the Avatar beach episode where there's like everyone's feeling out their emotional turmoil. But that could be a thing too, right? Just kind of unwind and talk about your story. I can already see our gym leader in training having that Zuko beach episode. Like, guys, like, you know why I carry this dark ball around my neck? And then when he opens up the dark ball, John Cena comes out, right? I'm just joking. But he just explains to them that how dark he used to be. And maybe this is after he's got to know them, because he'd be too afraid to tell them sooner because they might leave him. But explain how he's trying to redeem himself. Because it's not something you talk about in the first episode. You don't like, hey guys, I used to mistreat Pokemon. Now let's sleep in close proximity to each other. Let's go on a journey together. Let's trust each other. No, you wanna build that relationship and then like reveal who you used to be for that kind of person. Alrighty. Anyways, yeah, downtime episodes are always awesome. Pokemon wish list. Everyone has their favorite Pokemon. And if they have bad taste, it's probably not even Garvanchula. I mean, every Pokemon is viable in the system except for Dunsparce. Alright. As a GM, let's see here. Most people who pick up Pokeymanz will have at least 1 or 2 Pokemon that they want to be added to their team during their journeys. A wish list given to the GM. Alright. Oh, a list of Pokemon that the players want to see. A wish list given to the GMs. Okay. GM doesn't have to stick to a wish list, but during encounter prep, they can make an effort to slide in the Pokemon. It has 2 benefits. It gives the players a chance to catch the Pokemon they want. More subtly, it reduces the burden of choice on GMs. I like this. If it's like 1 or 2 Pokemon, I have no issues making sure they're given adequate opportunities at times, since 4 players, that's now 8 mons, to catch their favorite Pokemon. But I wouldn't want someone to give me a wish list of like 6. Like, this isn't the video game. You don't need your perfect meta team, anything like that. Let's have that story where you find the ridiculously overpowered Krogunk who can smash meteors, right? I don't know what plans you had for your team, but I think they're going out the window when you see this bad boy in action. Let's have those stories. Let's find that Charmander at the Pokemon retreat area that's trainers mistreating him by the Pokemon Center. Let's have those moments to build out our teams naturally, how it used to be. And even when I give you those moments, I don't expect them to necessarily go on your team. Because it could say like, oh, well, now you're trying to make their team for them. But the reality is I want to put them in a situation where they can find Pokemon in the environment, whether they just protect them, treat them well, get them somewhere safe, or add them to their team. And I want to promote the old school episodes in that regard. Put those situations in front of them. Not to pluck them right onto their team. Like, hey guys, isn't this so awesome? My story, don't you love me? No, it's like an opportunity to see that the world around you is alive. And how do we do that? By telling very vivid, awesome stories. And every now and then, those stories are going to put you in a position to really choose whether you want this Pokemon that maybe you classically hated in the games. Maybe you thought it sucked, like Dunsparce. And now Dunsparce is on your team. Alright, Pokemon wishlist. Freaks and Geeks, NPC design. Oh wait, people live in the world? You need NPCs. NPCs aren't given a lot of focus in most systems, at least in terms of how to make them work for your story. How do you make an NPC truly stand out? The Pokemon world is absolutely bursting in the seams with memorable and fun personalities. GMs should consider more than just a character's role in the plot. What about an NPC makes them connect with the players and their characters? The story should always belong to the PCs first. That goes without saying. We're not here to tell the stories of the NPCs, but the NPCs are very important. At times, it could be very short times as important as the PCs. For example, the climactic encounter with Team Fusion's leader. Their story is extraordinarily important. How did they get to this point? But the grunts? Who cares? We're not here to tell the grunt story. Unless the players are the grunts. Which could be a fun story too, like you guys are all the villains. Yeah, the revamped Golden Rule 1 then. Anyways, yeah, there's moments where the NPC stories can be just as big as the PCs, but it's always the PC stories first. And that's why, even though the boss is in front of them, it's their job to create, tailored to the outcome of that. Alright, with that in mind, let's build up a way to notate NPCs in a way that's quick, flexible, and formulaic. I like the word formulaic. I don't get a chance to read it often. So whenever I read the word formulaic, I just like saying it. And that will work in service to your players and your game. Alright, which brings us to NPC roles. What roles do they serve in the world? Sorry, sipping my coffee and I'll read up on chat here. The game is made for long journeys, but I actually had to be in a mini journey of 5 to 7 sessions that ran just fine, even had a legendary involved. Nuts. You'd be surprised how make the PCs the main characters and not the NPCs is very much not something that goes without saying. Oh, I absolutely understand that. Absolutely understand that. For someone like me who's ran maybe 2,000 or 3,000 D&D games, it's not an exaggeration. I started doing I started running games weekly in 2015 when I got out of the military. It was kind of my safe space, my relaxation. Like, military sucked ass. It was very negative. I would never take that away because I am proud I served. I do love some of the accomplishments I had. Like, they sent me to Japan, they sent me to Korea, to many of the states like Alaska, which feel like another country. I rekindled my relationship with my current wife. We've been together for goddamn, like 10 years, long time. So there's a lot of great things that came from it. But anyways, when I got out, one of the things I really wanted to get into was to find something that could take my mind off of things. And that was D&D and adjacent games. So when I started doing all that stuff, I understood how important it was to eventually kind of like know that it's everyone's story. It's not just me writing a book. And anyways, that goes into the fact that I've seen over the course of that as a player and as a game master, both sides of the spectrum, where sometimes it felt like you were just hearing a story that was narrated for you and you were along for the ride versus being the one driving and me telling you what's at the end of the road, which is what the real thing should be. You're in the car, you're driving, I tell you what's at the end of the road. And then you tell me you turn left and you don't engage it, or you go and engage it. Anyways, the deep lores, the deep lore drops. That is what I'm here for. Let's see here. All right, let's go these bolds. We're gonna hit the bolds on the left and right side. What an NPC's intended role is, the story, what they've done. I read that. The first thing we'll define for our formula is an NPC's role. It's not enough to have an important and well-conceived NPC. Players like to follow their own organic attachments, so their relations to those NPCs and their stuff. Come up with ways to deal with this tendency. Alright, GM should master the ability to retroactively evolve any NPC the players get involved with into the plot. Like, if someone you didn't intend to as a one-off NPC, the players absolutely love them, give them an excuse to show up again, basically. keep a list of NPCs in its own document for journeys. Everyone important in the world immediately pops out in one way or another. Quirks and sadness are notes on which about the NPCs would hook a player emotionally, especially if they gravitate to similar feelings. Like, I can already see a potential rival is another GM in training disrespecting the player GM in training because he understands what the dark ball means. Like, you think you'll ever be a Pokemon gym leader? I don't think so. Look at you, you're a disgrace. Points to his Pokeball in dramatic effect. There's a long pause. People in the background are gasping. And then there's a random Slowpoke smiling. Yeah, that could be a fun rival for him. Two people trying to become gym leaders. One doesn't respect the other because of his past. Even though the one that doesn't respect him is a trust fund baby, but we won't get into that. Alright, quirk should always be front and center. Sadness about should be introduced as the quirk is established. The more important a character is intended to be, the more likely they should be to have a second sadness. Let me read that again. That confused me for half a second. Quirks and sadness. So quirks and sadness is its own thing. It's not just a portion of a quirk. Okay. This is the kind of art I'm going for the town. Stuff like this. Team gimmicks. Alright, team gimmick is a Pokemon specific aspect of NPC creation. Simply put out, of relation does this happen to be their Pokemon and how it's reflected in their team composition. Their team can speak volumes about their personality and make a trainer immediately memorable. Here are some team gimmicks. The trainer has a clear type specialty. All the trainer's Pokemon are the same species. Oh lord. I have to fight 6 Metapods again. Or Magikarps. Trainer's Pokemon all follow a clear theming. Trees, jewels, humanoid Pokemon, dogs. The trainer has just one super powerful Pokemon partner. Or maybe 2 if you're Tobias. All the trainer's Pokemon are suited specifically to help with their hobby or job. The trainer's Pokemon are all Pokemon that share a particular battle gimmick, such as a stall team. Alright, obviously this applies first and foremost to trainers. When designing a Pokemon NPC, their species and what friends they have. Have fun with this. Alright, so these little blocks here I like to read. Steven, I don't know, Stone? Steven Stone. Role, Pokemon League champion. Likes rocks a lot. Hounded by the responsibility to take over a company he doesn't want to someday. Steel type specialist. And a shiny hunter maybe? Devon Air. Players met him in Dewford Cave and took a shiny to him. Likes the info dump. Tie him in with the main plot. Knows regional legends. Maybe he's friends with Wallace. That sounds funny. So, you know, one fun thing that's not really an NPC, but is a pseudo NPC, is I talk to players on my server about being gym leaders. People that love Pokemon but can't commit to a journey. So I already have one of them lined up to be an electric gym leader. That's going to be in the 2nd or 3rd town. So I'll teach him the bare minimum of the mechanics. He understands great aspects of roleplay, so he can pick his moves and roleplay how he intends them to go out, which is really the meat of the system. And then the die tells the fallout and stuff, right? So I'm already excited to have both NPCs and pseudo PCs that serve smaller roles. But I'm also talking about him about being in 2 or 3 episodes because something happened at the power plant and the gym leader's trying to solve the issue. Instead of it always being an NPC, sometimes they're going to have what I call guest stars, which I've used in a lot of my games in a professional capacity and just home games too. All right. Putting it all together. After putting all these things together, we have a story stat block for an NPC that looks a little like this. Okay, we covered that. Hey bro, what's your elo? Designing for difficulty. Pokeymanz is at a hard a system devised to be fine-tuned at the last mile, that is to say. Gyms and their groups are encouraged to throw out or rewrite large chunks of the rules, because they don't vibe with the gameplay experience or story desired. This extends to the system's difficulty balancing, which as written is heavily tilted towards the player's success, which may not be suitable for all games. Or if it is suitable for all games, which is not all situations. Even if you're not designing the Tomb of Horrors as a GM, you will usually want to know what rules contribute to making things easier and what rules contribute to you laughing like a maniac. Making things harder. There are 3 main places to turn the dials for difficulty. Outright house rules, resource management, and counter tuning. Yeah, I was thinking about resource management. I wasn't sure I was going to let people long rest. outside of Pokemon centers. Give them incentives to take potions on the road or to get to the next town as fast as possible. Of course, still enjoy the sights, but if things start getting rough, like, hey guys, we need to get somewhere. Unless there are some edges and stuff or aspects that would just circumvent that, which is okay because then you took something to circumvent it. Okay. And I talked about this on previous streams. I'm not necessarily interested in making the game harder for the players, but I do want there to be a very big difference between a person with their starter Pokemon not defeating Ash Ketchum's Pikachu. House rules for difficulty, even though I'm pretty sure that trainer was playing Pokeymanz because he had things like Leaf Storm and other things, even though he's supposedly level 5 starter Pokemon. Alright, house rules for difficulty. Raising or lowering the hit or critical hit threshold. Critical hits. Switching. Okay, let's see what switching does. Because I was actually thinking about how switching works in the game. Like if I'm in the middle of the fight and I have a type disadvantage and I return my Pokemon, do I get hit for a freebie? Offers the ability to swap out at the top of the round for movement action. Taking the ability to switch without a battle action away or making switching a movement action anytime battles can require more careful planning. Noise. Optional rules. Edges. Legendary Pokemon. Resource management, wounding, and healing. Perhaps the most impactful resource management decision in Pokemon, to the point where it has been given out in its own section. Check out when to heal on the next page for more detailed breakdown. Oh, that's cool. I was just talking about that. Party size. Pokemon availability. TMs and tutors. Item availability. Survival. Commentator tokens. So these are all things I can read and break down in my own time. But it's nice to see that I have this resource for making the game more challenging and or making the game easier, which is Noisla. Alright, so when we pick up next time, we'll come back to when to heal. I have to go get my daughter. She's at school at 3:15. So, but her school's right down the street. Alright guys, as usual, it's really fun doing the live stream and talking. And I hope you guys are enjoying the experience. I know I can get off topic, but I'm very conversationalist. When I run a game, we're talking, we're having scenes, and every now and then we'll break it, we'll talk about something. And that's how I am when I review stuff. It's more like I'm talking to my friend versus just reading the rules of a book. In any case, everyone have a great day, and I'll see you all soon.